Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. I've been looking at these inexpensive and really interesting box sets on the Capriccio label, which, not coincidentally, I have permission to play bits of for you. So I like them even more when I get them. And this particular one that I found really surprised me because I haven't seen this stuff in a while, and it's good to see it back. Herbert Kegel's Beethoven Cycle, and his Brahms German Requiem, and his Beethoven Triple Concerto and Choral Fantasy, and a disc of little encores that you're not going to believe. But these are really, really fine recordings. Now, some of you have already spoken about Kegel and said to me, you really should do something about him. And I agree. Kegel was a marvelous conductor. He was best known for his performances of contemporary repertoire, for doing Hindemith and Schoenberg and Britain's War Requiem and Penderecki, and all of the moderns, the avant-garde, and the German school. He was East German, born in Dresden, and spent most of his life in Leipzig and in Dresden. And he studied with Karl Böhm. He had a tremendous pedigree. And composition with Boris Blacher. He knew what he was doing. And he was one of the very, very few conductors who was equally superb as a choral director and as an orchestral conductor. Remember, we did a little chat on why so many choral directors are miserable orchestral conductors, but he did both, and he turned the Leipzig radio choir, and essentially any other choir that he worked with, into one of the finest vocal ensembles in the world, and you get to hear them in here. And believe you me, you will be thrilled with what you hear. Whenever he does a work that involves voices, he always picked decent voices, and he got sensational results from the chorus while still maintaining absolutely the highest possible standards from the orchestras. Now, what kind of a Beethoven conductor was he? A very good question, you might well ask. Well, he sort of seems to me a conductor who would be kind of like what Pierre Boulez would have been if Pierre Boulez had liked Beethoven. In other words, he is not a sentimentalist. He is an anti-romantic in a sense. He was a strict disciplinarian. He was extremely, extremely dedicated towards textural transparency, toward accent and rhythm. Have you heard his fantastic performance of Karl Orff's Carmina Burana and the other two in the trilogy, Catulle Carmina and Il Triunfo di Aphrodite? You know that rhythm was really one of his things, and these performances have rhythm. They're extremely well done. Now, they are performed by, let's get this straight, because the Dresden Philharmonic in these performances, and in the Ninth, I want to make sure we get all the right people. You have the combined Berlin Radio Chorus and the Leipzig Radio Chorus. And they sing the living daylights out of the finale. They really do. It's remarkable. These were always wonderful sounding recordings. But to get a sense of the kind of conductor he was, I want to play you that fabulous passage from the middle of the development section of the first movement of Beethoven's Eighth. That incredible climax, which is usually a clogged up mess in so many performances. It is astonishing how transparent this is, but at the same time, not excessively lightweight. It has the accent, it has the punch. You hear those bass lines, those critical, all-important bass lines like you probably never heard them before. It's really astonishingly fine. So here is a bit of the first movement of Beethoven's Eighth. And if you like this, if you like the approach, this is an incredibly consistent set of Beethoven symphonies. It is the approach he takes for all of the symphonies, which isn't to say he makes them all sound the same, but he plays them with the same emphasis on rhythm, transparency, balance. Really very, very good. Lively tempos. It's terrific stuff. So here is that moment from Beethoven's Eighth Symphony with the Dresden Philharmonic. It's really pretty terrific. It really is. When this Beethoven cycle came out originally on CD, it was an early digital recording. It was one of the very first Beethoven cycles on compact disc. And people really didn't give it much attention. I didn't give it the attention I think it probably deserved because, like everybody, we were waiting. We were waiting for Klemperer and Bernstein and Karajan and all of those people and Schulte and all the digital remakes that we knew were coming. And then they came, and then we kind of ignored Herbert Kegel. But coming back to it and listening to it again after all this time, it does not deserve to be dismissed. It is musically first rate. Now, in addition to the Beethoven symphonies, you also get the choral fantasy with Peter Rüssel on the piano and the triple concerto. My goodness, with, let's see, Peter Rüssel on the piano, Christian Funke violin, and Jörn Jakob Timm violoncello. And they're all, these are all soloists who I presume are from the orchestra. They play extremely well. It's a beautiful collegial performance, very well integrated, just the kind of thing you think Kegel would do well. And if you don't particularly care for the triple concerto, this is a good performance to hear because it's just an extremely musically sympathetic performance that really goes for the musical values in the work. It's not like a hotshot bunch of soloists because the piece is a concerto grosso. Essentially, everything has to be extremely well integrated, and it is. It's beautifully done. And the choral fantasy, well, you've got the choir. You've got the choir. Boy, that great choir. They're just fantastic. I just look at this and go, too bad they don't sing more. Although Peter Rüssel is a very fine pianist, and he does an excellent job with the solo part as well. So you don't have anything to worry about. Next, though, we get the Brahms German Requiem. This is, without a doubt, one of the great Brahms German Requiems. I love this performance. Why? Well, it lasts around 70 minutes, which means it's a bit on the quicker side, and frankly, the work only benefits from it. Truly does. It is one of those extremely sincere, unsentimental performances, and I like it played that way. This is me. That doesn't mean it's emotionally cool. It just means it's not slick. It's not insincere. It is so musically on point. And it's not an easy piece to do if you want to be so musically on point. I mean, the clarity of diction from the choir is so fabulous that you could actually write the text down as it's being sung. Even if you don't know German, trust me, you could do it phonetically. And beyond that, he captures all the orchestral detail, which is marvelous, by the way. I mean, the scoring of this piece is often just marvelous. And it's just a pity that it's either played for the voices or it's just a muddle, It's generally muddy. But not here. This is just a lovely performance. And here is a little sample of Den alles Fleisch ist wie Gras. Oh, yes, for all flesh is as grass. The second movement. I just think this is just listen to the choir. I mean, if that doesn't sell you, nothing will. Here it is. I think that's just spectacular. And it's in here. And the soloist, by the way, the soprano is Marion Hagender, who's a wonderful, wonderful soprano soloist, and Siegfried Lorenz, baritone, who's an excellent baritone. He appeared on many of these East German productions as baritone soloist. It's just a first-class performance in every respect. But the fun part is the last disc. Now, Kegel was not exactly a conductor that one associates with fun. Fun as in, ha-ha, fun. But this disc is fun. You're not going to believe what's on here. Are you ready? I mean, it's just unbelievable. You get Glinka, Ruslan and Ludmila Overture, Albinoni's Adagio, Gluck's Dance of the Blessed Spirits, Mussorgsky's Entr'acte from the fourth act, second scene of Chovanshchina, Ermanno Wolf-Ferrari's Intermezzo from I Quattro Rosteghi, Grieg's two elegiac melodies, Faya's Ritual Fire Dance, Sibelius's Valse Triste, Franz Schmidt, the Notre Dame Intermezzo, Pagliacci, the Intermezzo, Igor Stravinsky, Circus Polka, and last but not least, by no means least, you get Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance March number 1 as the rousing finale. And of course, as you all know, the Pomp and Circumstance March number 1 is the second greatest work that Elgar ever wrote after the March of the Mughal Emperors from the Crown of India suite, which of course is his shattering masterpiece. Nothing else he wrote comes within 100 miles of it. But this performance of Pomp and Circumstance, if you want to hear an unidiomatic performance, totally sincere, beautifully done, given with complete conviction, and completely unlike anything you'll ever hear coming out of England, you gotta hear this Pomp and Circumstance March number 1. And I'm going to play you the reprise of the march and the reprise of the big tune all the way to the end, just so you get a sense of this piece when it is stripped down to its musical essence and rendered with absolute avant-garde clarity and precision. This is such a hoot. Here you go. worth the very, very reasonable price of the box, I should say. So it was wonderful having this, wonderful hearing this, and making acquaintance of these performances again after such a long time. Kegel had a very sad end. He suffered throughout his life from clinical depression, and he committed suicide in 1990. And I can't help but think that that had something to do with the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the stuff that was going on, and the turmoil in his life, which would have been, I'm sure, something to cause him grave concern as somebody who had spent his life and career mostly in East Germany. But he was really on the verge of, that wonderful thing that happens to so many artists, their autumnal, wise old man mastery period. And unfortunately, he took his own life, so he didn't live to experience that. But he made a lot of recordings, and it's a very, very admirable legacy. Nowhere more so than in this Beethoven, Brahms, and everything but the kitchen sink collection of orchestral masterpieces. I really, really recommend that you hear it if you're one of those collectors who, can't ever get enough. It's really, really good stuff. And it was a joy to hear it again. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. Take care.